you tell me how you got started being a voice actor?
I pretty much always loved animation. I grew up on a steady diet of cartoons, the Disney Afternoon, and anything that I could get on my little crappy 8-channel antenna, living in the middle of nowhere, Texas, and also found a love for acting and performance in general. I grew up in an artist family, and it just was always around creativity. And around the time that I was probably 8 or 9, I knew that I wanted to try at some point, that acting was probably what I wanted most to try and pursue. And then as I got into high school and middle school, high school, I became an anime fan, and my interest kind of started to shift over that direction as well. I really wanted to try to do anime voice work. And before I even graduated high school, I found out that 2 of the biggest companies in the States that deal with distributing and dubbing Japanese anime were in my state. Like, one was an hour and a half north of me, the other was 2.5 hours south of me. And some friends of mine that lived in a friend of mine that lived in Austin that I knew through a anime forum that I frequented growing up went to school with a voice actress that was the voice of Nadia in the old ADV dub of Nadia's Secret of Blue Water, and got me the phone number for their Monster Island, their Austin division. And I just called them up, and did that a little bit over the course of a few months during my senior year of high school. And then before I graduated, I got my first gig with them and just started doing more. And now here I am 11 years later.
So when you also do a little bit of ADR script writing as well. So do you find that helps with understanding some of these scripts for the characters that you end up voicing?
Yeah, it's once I started to, especially with Funimation, just because of how intricate their scripts can be in terms of everything that's on the page. Knowing what each individual mark, the little custom marks that we have, definitely helps when you're in the booth recording. We kind of have our own language as opposed... we kind of have our own language for marking what an actor is supposed to do at a certain moment, and like marking different sound effects or whatever you're supposed to be doing with your mouth, how you're supposed to shape your mouth to do it, and whether when there's a pause, when there's a break, all these other things. It actually, I think, it's kind of a reverse. It helps more. It helps more in writing to have in booth experience than it does to write and then go into the booth. It's like people. I've noticed a lot that some writers that we have that have never set foot in the booth or recorded on anything tend to not necessarily write for how we would have to be dealing with those words or any sort of dialogue in the booth. So I think that's one of the reasons why I think some of the more successful, or just the ADR writers that have been doing this the longest, are people that started in the booth and then became writers. And that's what I did.
Awesome. So speaking of Funimation, they've kind of revolutionized dubbing of anime with their broadcast dubs, which are coming out, within weeks of the episodes airing in Japan. How do you find the recording experience is different when you're doing those versus like a home video release where you have an entire season already ready to be, dubbed?
It's not that much different for voice actors. We tend to come in instead of... The only thing that's changed is that some of us are in the booth a little more often, but for not as long. Like when we were just doing straight-to-DVD releases, we would do the entire series over the course of anywhere from 2 to 3 months or more. And we'd do all the writing, we would do all the scripting, everything, and go through the entire show. So you could sometimes be working on one single show all day long, like for 8 straight hours recording. But now with the broadcast dubs, we're only working in episodes at a time, like one episode at a time as they're written. So you could come in, even if you have a lead, you might only be in for 3 or 4 hours, and then you get to go to another booth and record another episode on something else. And so it has kind of made it so we do stuff a little faster, where we get to experience more. But on the writing side, we've been doing that even faster. It's really, that's the biggest side effect that everything that the broadcast dub schedule has had on the industry, or at least for Funimation, is the fact that we're having to churn stuff out really fast, and it's keeping a lot of people, especially the directors. A lot of the directors at the studio have been working really, really hard, like harder than they should,
right?
Just to make sure that we get this stuff out.
So when you think of all the sub-genres in anime that you've done, and you've done a lot, what do you find is your favorite to do? Whether it's science fiction, mecha, whether it's slice of life.
Excuse me. Generally, I go for fantasy. I've always been a big fan of fantasy, especially for writing. I love being able to use, I guess, high language is one way to put it. But I really I like being able to really make a character sound almost musical in the way that they talk, and a lot of high fantasy really gives you that opportunity. But in terms of voicing, two of the shows that I've had the most fun on, and have been really kind of career defining and sometimes life changing roles were slice of life shows like Princess Jellyfish or Devil is a Part-Timer, which they have their own little fun elements that aren't necessarily slice of life, but the entire point of them is that they are a slice of life. Right. And those shows, I think, are just, they really kind of break the mold. It's like watching an anime sitcom.
Especially Devil is a Part-Timer.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, it's just so smartly written.
Yeah,
like the way that it's portrayed and everything else, it's just so wonderfully and carefully crafted. That it really does. There's very few shows that I can think of that are like those shows.
Yeah, and I know we want more of Devil's Part-Timer too.
Oh yeah,
we're still waiting on that.
Same here, man.
Maybe forever.
Yeah, probably. Unfortunately, but you never know.
No, you don't.
I'm still waiting for more Kenichi.
Yeah, true.
I'm still waiting from that, man.
So, how did you find that going to conventions changed for you after getting the role on Attack on Titan, playing Armin and narrating many of the episodes?
I got a lot more. So I started traveling a lot more, but that's really all there is to it. But I have noticed too, like when I go to cons now, I have a lot less free time now. Ever since I got that part. It's been fun though. It's been a real fun ride. This year alone, I think is my 9th or 10th con this year, and then usually, and I've still got I want to say 5 more before the end of it, 5 or 6 more before the year's done. And normally before Attack on Titan, I would maybe do 6 a year, maybe. And so yeah, I've almost doubled, if not maybe tripled.
So will you be voicing anyone possibly on any of these spin-off Attack on Titans that they're doing, assuming Funimation grabs a license for them?
Right. I would be very surprised if Funimation did not get them. So hopefully, if they do, if and when, then I'll get to reprise Armin, for the little high school, the junior Titan
junior
thing,
version,
and of course whenever season 2 comes out sometime next year.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what I just, as long as I can get to reprise that, I'd be very happy.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that character in that show.
Yeah, he's a very analytical character, and I know he's one of everybody's favorites.
Yeah.
Do you find when you land a role on a particular anime, do you go to the manga, if there is any, and kind of read up on it to give yourself some context on the character?
It depends on whether or not the manga has been released legally in the States, and also a lot of times, like for Fairy Tail, whenever I was writing Fairy Tail, or whenever I would, if I was going to be voicing a character, we always had the manga on hand. It would actually be provided to us. So yeah, we have that as a resource. Most of the time, I prefer anime. I prefer to actually watch. I prefer the animation side of it. So I'll usually, if I'm going to research a show, I'll just watch it, as opposed to going and reading the material. But there's a lot of times where you don't have any opportunity whatsoever to get to study a show before you go in, and sometimes directors actually prefer that you do not, because it's very easy for actors to fall into the trap of, if they're researching it on their own, they start to get an idea in their heads of what the character should sound like, how things should be read and everything. And whatever you're watching, because obviously we'll be watching subtitles, the subtitles that are there, there's a really good chance that the lines that we're going to be delivering are not going to be exactly the same as the subtitles.
Right.
Just because of, how long the mouth movements and everything else, we have to change them up. So, and the director might have a completely different idea as to where he or she wants the character to go, or how he wants the character to sound. And if you get too sold or too married to the idea of like what you think it should be, it could be very, very difficult to actually deliver what the director wants.
Right.
So a lot of times they will just have they'll tell, and a director will specifically say, please don't watch this. Right. It would just come in and we'll work on this. So
gotcha.
Yeah.
So when you talk to fans that are new to anime, I've only been into it for maybe a year, and I've marathoned a lot in a short period of time.
There's a lot addicting. Too. You've got about 30, 40 years of back catalog you can go through, man.
And I've been slowly adding to it.
Awesome, man.
What recommendations would you give to a new fan of animation on where they should start, what subgenre they should start with, or just kind of dive in and pick something?
Well, it really just it depends on what you like the genres that you like. Like for me, I really loved fantasy, and so for me, one of the big animes that really got me into anime was the Slayers. The sword and sorcery fantasy, a lot of fun. Have you seen it?
I have not yet. I've heard of it. It's been recommended many times.
Many times. It is my all-time favorite anime ever. Yeah. I love the Slayers.
It was Neon Genesis for me. That was my first one for mecha science fiction.
And mechs are great, like Gundam. I loved the Gundam series growing up. Loved Gundam Wing. G Gundam is easily my favorite. It's the most racist Gundam out there, and it's just ridiculous. I mean, the Mexican Gundam is a giant cactus with a sombrero, for God's sake. But yeah, to me, it's hard to just recommend something because everybody has their niche. Everybody has their something that they like, and until you find an anime, I think a lot of times until someone finds an anime that hits on one of those either subgenres or niches that someone really likes, it's really hard to just it's really hard for them to just get into anime.
Right.
So I mean, if you like horror, if you like any sort of like a survival thing, Another is a great anime. Very dark, very scary. A lot of mystery and intrigue. Future Diary, there is another good one. Kind of that survival horror game type thing. Kill or Be Killed. Attack on Titan, another kind of survival horror, and also, but so much more than that. Also, just a human drama. Yeah. If you're looking for a comedy, you've got one of the world's biggest libraries of comedies that you can find in all different shapes and sizes. And you can go to, if you want to. I will always recommend shows by Shinichi Watanabe or Nabishin, Excel Saga, Puni Puni Poemi, Naruma Daikon Brothers, The Wallflower. All of these really great shows. If you like action, it's hard to beat Dragon Ball or the Dragon Ball Z series, and that's that was another kind of gateway anime for me, was DBZ, getting into everything else. If you like, and there's something out there for everyone, and that's one of the great things about anime is there literally is something out there for no matter what your age, no matter what your interests, anything. There is something out there for you. It's just a matter of finding it.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today, Josh.
You bet, man. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Thank you.